Good evening, this is the news.
Spoiled my intro. Morning, everybody. Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Fife Property Show this Saturday morning. I hope the weather's nice where you are. It's actually quite nice here. I didn't expect such a sunny morning. I'm joined, obviously, as you know, by Jim. Mr. Parker, morning. How are you?
Good evening. Yeah. Well, good evening.
You're saying it again.
There we are. That's because I was saying about the news. And
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Good morning. Yeah. How are you?
I'm good.
Fantastic day. I mean, my head was buzzing again this morning. I mean, I just kept thinking numbers and numbers and numbers. I'll tell you what I came across this morning. I'm going to quickly jump on it, and we're going to talk about this on the Wealth Creation Show at 6:30 on Monday night. Okay, and I can't believe people are actually teaching this crap, and it's like, because it's completely delusional. So I'm going to pop on and show you this. Right? Okay, this is this guy. He comes onto TikTok. He's been trained by a supposed superior wealth trainer. Well, not even a wealth trainer, to be honest. A property investment guru. Or some sort, and he's got like, oh, okay, like we could put 105,000 purchase price, 26,200 down as a deposit. We could have $2,000 legal fees. We could have 7,000 works. The current mortgage would be 78,750, and the new house valuation would be 140 grand. What, really? 35 grand added on with $7,000 improvements. What surveyor's going to agree to that?
Yeah. How did you get that valuation?
And then he's gone and going, oh, I could remortgage it 105,000 because the 140,000, 75%, and then take the 26,250 out. Okay, but you still got the $7,000 left in for the works. You still got the $2,000 left in for the legal fees. You've also got arrangement fees, which you've missed out for your mortgage in there. You've also got redemption fees because you've probably got a mortgage that's actually allowed you to have a redemption exit fee. So you've got that missed out as well. So you've got all these things missed out, and it's complete naivety and trying to make out that he's actually not got any money in this at all, and is bullshit. Yeah. And that's the shit that people teach in buy-to-let. I hate, you know, you could hear me. I'm really annoyed about this and the fact that people teach this, because I did this 30 years ago and it does not work like this. I learned a very valuable lesson. I sat in front of Scottish Homes and said, at some point in time, I will have 100,000 houses. And that was based on this principle. It doesn't work like that at all. Absolutely not. So we're going to talk about that a bit more on the Wealth Creation Show on Monday night at 6:30 live on my public profiles on YouTube, on Instagram, on what else? We're on YouTube, Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on a couple other channels as well, Twitter as well. So we're going to talk about that as well as loads of other things on the Wealth Creation Show. But let's crack on with this show and take this away.
No, that's fine. But
get back in the zone, change my mood in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example of not doing it properly. I mean, it is a numbers game, but you do need to do it properly.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about as well is the deferred taxation you've got in there.
Yep.
What happens when you try to exit later on? You've got a deferred taxation gain, so you're actually maybe, and no, I'll not talk about it anymore, because there's a lot of people that fell foul now of what they did 25 years ago like this. They've fallen into the trap, and they fell into a debt trap, basically, and they could not exit, and they still can't exit. Hence the reason why I'm speaking to some people right now who have got huge portfolios, and they have no exit strategy anymore, because this has caused them a problem. So it's complete naivety to teach this in buy-to-let in terms of doing it like numbers like that. Good morning, George. Nice to see you've got a 5 in there.
That's for your Wealth Creation Show. So, George, you tune in on Monday and you'll get more about that on the Wealth Creation.
If we're coming through loud and clear and you understand where we're going and you like what you see, please feel free to make a comment. Just put a 5 in just to see you're here. We love the audience interaction. Honest. Share the post if you can as well, because there's other people out there that want to get involved in this, but they don't know what to do. And then they go and seek advice from people that will charge them thousands and thousands of pounds to do this, when we're actually giving it away for free.
Yeah. Yeah, we're happy to obviously discuss things. And today's topic is profit or loss and getting your buy-to-let figures right, which I think is all relevant this morning. And I think you find your perfect property as your next or your first buy-to-let. Ideally, if it's in fantastic condition, perhaps maybe brand new. The place is ready to go and ready to rent. There's no furnishings to buy, the kitchen appliances, or nothing to paint or repair. All that's left to do is find a tenant, watch the rent come in, and enjoy the proceeds. Now, that all sounds simple enough, or is it really?
Or is it?
Yeah, or is it really? There's a lot to consider when you're buying rental property. And to be sure you've accounted for every expense, not only the initial purchase cost, but also mortgage repayments, fixed rates, terms, ongoing maintenance, income tax, allowable expenses, and any service charges or ground rents, not to mention a contingency plan for when the unexpected inevitably happens. And we know that all too well. Jim, you'll know that over the years, and so do I, obviously, for management properties. You need to have a contingency. And I'm sure you agree, I've got
you always have to have contingency.
Morning, Phil.
Morning, Phil. You always have to have contingency here. The last thing you should do is go in, and I used to say Monte Carlo or bust, and I still have that sort of mantra about the Monte Carlo or bust. And for some people, it's like, oh my God, how could you do that? It's like, but I actually don't do that. I actually put belts and braces on everything and make sure that I forecast for the downside, and I mitigate that completely when I go into anything in order to, when anything happens. Hence the reason why there's people panicking, literally panicking on social media about the government's rent controls. And I'm like, I'm buying. I'm typing everywhere. I'm buying. If anybody's selling, I'm buying. It's like, my God, it's rent controls will not affect me at all, because I've hedged on that completely for that reason. And I know there's certain legislation which stops the Scottish government from doing certain things as a result. So, you could say, oh, well, it'll come back to haunt you, but it won't come back to haunt me, because I've played for that downside already. I understand the mechanics.
You've got a plan and a
well, it's 30 years experience in this. I know exactly what's coming. I know what they're doing all the time. I keep my finger on the pulse all the time. I make sure I keep engaged with everything that's happening behind the scenes, and also the consultation papers as well, in order to mitigate these things. So it's a smooth process in terms of earning, and it's not a volatile, oh my God, the government's changing something. What am I going to do now? I'm going to have to change my whole strategy. I've learned all the mistakes over the last 30 years. I kind of think there's anything else that could actually happen that's not going to come up that I've no encountered before. So I've forecasted and mitigate for all these things. So again, if you're selling, I'm buying. It's the right number, and Richard, I'm making offers all the time, and some will stick and some won't. But some people are ready. Some people are ready to go, and that's the nature of the business. But I'm in this forever, till I'm dead, and then it's still going after me.
That's the interesting thing as well, Jim. You're not just planning this to run for your life; you're expecting it to keep running. It will run. It will run for
my kids, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, my great great grandchildren, great great grandchildren, and every other generation to come. It will still continue to go, and they will have the choices to do whatever they want, whenever they want, at any point in time they want, because they will never need to rely on our mainstream income, and they won't be owned and controlled by anyone else as a result. Some would say that, like, oh, but that's the struggle and all the rest of it. Yeah, they will struggle, but it's there if they need it. That's it. That's all it comes down to.
And ultimately, I think a lot of people, that is what they would like to get from their buy-to-let journey, not just for their life, for their family and things, and to pass it along. So we're going to cover quite a lot, or try and cover as much as we can this morning. I think firstly we'll talk about legal costs, and it costs money to buy a rental property, of course. Conveyancing, mortgage application fees, land and building tax, and additional dwelling supplement as well. Now, surprisingly enough, when I speak to people, and especially maybe new landlord investors and things, ADS, additional dwelling supplement, they're not really that aware of it, and it's unavoidable, and it's something that you do need to take into consideration. For those of you that don't know, obviously any additional purchase to your own residence, which is above 40,000, you're going to pay your 4% ADS on that. So
and that's another thing we were going to talk about on the Wealth Creation Show. It's I've come across this week where somebody's got an existing property they actually live in as a principal private residence, but when they move to their next property and they keep that property, unless they do it in a certain way, they will pay ADS on their next purchase of their own house to stay in. because they've got the existing property in their name. So, you know, a wee strategy we're going to talk about again on the Wealth Creation Show on Monday night is actually how to avoid that. And it's a good way to do it. Yeah, okay. I'll not go on about a bit more because then I'm still more thunder, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you take away from the other show, and I think.
But additional dwelling supplement for anybody out there is, as you said, Richard, for somebody that doesn't know, because we always refer to jargon ADS, and everybody goes, "Oh, what's ADS?" So ADS is a 4% duty in Scotland. It's 3% in England. If you buy a second home, you have to pay that over and above the normal stamp duty or land and building transaction tax in Scotland. So you will have to pay that over and above. Now, to be honest, ADS this year has been nothing. It's 4%, big deal, but property prices in Fife went up 16%. So you've still made 12% and your ADS has disappeared. It's maybe an amount you've got to pay in the beginning and you've got to pay up front as a result. And for some people, it's like, oh, it's a cash flow thing. And it can only be deducted at the end, really, and not at the beginning. It has to be capitalised. So there's no much you can do about it. You just got to suck it up. But if you're holding it for medium to long term, it's completely irrelevant. And it does put a lot of investors off. I don't want to pay 4%. It's like, are you kidding yourself? It's like, that's complete broke mentality. It's like, you know, you have to think farmer mentality. Plant the seed, sow the seed, nurture the seed, grow the seed, water the seed, and keep doing that and grow it and get the best yield possible, and then reap the harvest at the end. That's really what it comes down to. So you have to adopt things as a farmer mentality in buy-to-let and investment strategies.
It's all about nurturing your investment and things. And
get a good conveyancer as well. When you said, Richard, legal costs, get a good conveyancer. I mean, you know, we talk about, in Fife anyway, we talk about Williams, McRae and Cooper. I mean, Williams, McRae and Cooper is still really good price point. Ennis Johnson and Leydon's a good price point as well. So is John Gilbert's and Glenorthus. He's a great price point for conveyancing as well. Some of them will do back-to-back deals. In other words, if you're doing buying and selling, they will actually give it a less of a price. So I find the independents a lot less in terms of cost. So I definitely find independents. The independent solicitors is less of a cost than the actual corporates. And I mean, the big corporate branches, like we're actually selling properties and we're doing everything else at the same time. It's like these people are charging about almost sometimes double the price. It's eye-watering, and yet to me it's the same service. There's no dark art in conveyancing. It's like pretty logical and strategic and structural in terms of what you're doing. So I can't see it. I can't see why it would cost double the amount.
Yeah, and like you say, like the Gilbertsons and Ennis Johnson and McRae, they're all local guys, and they're really good at what they do. They've done it for years, and quite competitively priced.
W.S. Bruce and
Kirkcaldy,
Ennis Johnson, Kirkcaldy, and W.S. Bruce, Dunfermline as well. They're good as well for conveyancing. So mortgage application fees, you said it yourself. Mortgage application fees. This is the one that we talked about just the other now. You know, you've got mortgage application fees at the beginning when you apply for a mortgage. That could be anything from £2,000 to $999 to zero in the beginning. You've also got a broker you would have to use. So a broker would charge you for a service because they don't make any money out of buy-to-let mortgages anymore. Really, you're lucky if they get a small percentage, if hardly anything, like a 0.1 or 0.2% of the actual mortgage amount. So while they used to get a bigger amount from the lenders, and that paid for their fees, and they didn't need to charge you, it costs you an arm and a leg, you know, now to use a mortgage broker. But they're providing a service. I mean, these guys are actually. It's like this is an estate agent and letting agents. We know we're in the know. You come to us for our knowledge and our expertise. You can try and do it yourself, but I tell you what, if you do it wrong, it could end up locking you into a deal which could cost you thousands to exit later on, which might not be the right product for you in this environment, or which could actually cost you maybe about £50 extra a month, and that's £600 a year. So their fees are usually £500. So in 1 year, you've actually saved your money by using a mortgage broker to do the job. And we've got a couple of them. You know, we've got Kessa from Freedom Financial. We've got Neil Bird from Cara Mortgages.
Yeah, there's definitely a few. I've got a couple of questions there. Phil saying, is ADS deductible against capital gains?
That's a good one, Phil. I'll tell you on the Wealth Creation Show.
I was going to say, do you want to answer that now? But Phil, tune in on Monday, and Jim will dive into that a wee bit deeper. And James is giving me a shout out there. WAS Bruce and Burnt Island. Julie does a fabulous job, competitive price. So, yeah, definitely, there's some good mortgage advisors and conveyancers and things that local ones that you should obviously speak to us about using if you're going to be going through that process. So. And yeah, Phil, tune in on Monday and Jim will delve into that a wee bit deeper.
Absolutely. I mean, I know the answer, but we'll be here forever talking about all these different things.
I know. So yeah, so I think the rule of thumb, obviously, the costs, these costs are unavoidable. So budget for them early on, and check your statement from the solicitors so well before you complete, to avoid obviously scrambling around at the last minute to try and get funds together for something that you're not aware of. Or not planned for early enough on in the day when you're doing a buy-to-let purchase.
Yeah, improvements. Talk about
improvements. I mean, if you're going to renovate a property before renting it, make sure you've costed everything fully. I think people pick up. I mean, we were talking about this the other day, Jim, about picking up properties and tearing them apart and overspending, and
why are people doing this?
I know.
Is this just a thing for TikTok or something like that? They're wanting to go in and batter hell out of a property.
I know.
You know, if the wall's there and it doesn't add any value, taking it away, or it doesn't, you know, we're going to knock down the wall and we're going to put it up again. It's like, why on earth are you doing it? You've got folk with masks on and showing pictures of themselves and we're having a great time. It's like, and I'm going, you're not earning any money. That's the first thing I'm thinking. It's like, that's no buy to let. That's destruction. That's wealth destruction more than buy to let. Is that really adding additional value, knocking down a wall and putting up another one or doing something like that? I would question that. That's almost like when Sarah Beanie used to have her head in her hands on, you know,
property ladder.
Property ladder, and folk were going, I'm going to take this away and I'm going to take the bedroom away, and she's going, oh my God, are you crazy? And then it's like, and the person gets to the end and goes, I can't understand how the property is worth 20,000 less. Hello, McFly. It's like flipping heck, eh?
I think it's wise to make sure you've costed everything fully and make sure you have all the money available to pay for works. Starting a project while expecting the fund at a later date is a risky strategy, unless you have a guarantee with the money when the money will arrive. So I think it's be careful at that initial stage about what you're actually going to do and how much you're going to put in and whether you can afford to do that.
And I would say plan for incidentals and unexpected costs. Plan for it. Just put a contingency in anyway. Now, normally I used to put 10% in as a contingency just in case. If you've got expertise and knowledge in that, you probably wouldn't need to do that anymore because you know exactly what the numbers are. But always plan. Always have a wee buffer there. You don't want to strap yourself right to the limit and then find out you've got to find additional cash. It takes a lot of time, resources, and plus stress. It's a big thing. Stress will cause you to work less efficient. Therefore, less money gets made as a result. When you think about it, if you've only got say you only had a 40-hour week, right? And you had a whole load of jobs and you had 60 hours worth of work and 30 of these hours paid £2,000 an hour and the other 30 of these hours paid £1,000 an hour. A lot of people actually still go for the £1,000 an hour ones because they don't understand it. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll just concentrate on the 30. It does 2,000, and then I'll add on 10 1,000s after it, and that's how I'll maximise my income. They don't think like that logically. They don't look at it. They actually think about the emotional aspect and how that's involved. And maybe I should do this because that will help that person out. It's like, no. Your obligation is to maximise your income as much as possible in the time that you've got. If you've got limited time, concentrate on the things that make the most money.
Yeah.
That's a wealth creation as well.
I was just going to say, and just quickly, Sharon's just jumped in there. She says, "Is it worth having a limited company if you only have 2 rental properties?" Not necessarily.
I'm going to talk about that on Monday night.
I was just going to say, not necessarily, Sharon. And we did do a show on limited companies and things a couple of weeks ago. I'll stick the link in.
Actually, I'll find that right now and put it in the comments for you, Sharon.
Jim will stick the link to our show 2 weeks ago. I think it was Jim. We done that.
Yep.
And tune in on Monday, Sharon, because Jim will cover that as well. But yeah, with any renovation project, it's important to neither over or underdo your or under improve. And I think about your target market and the likely wear and tear on your property then balance your expenditure with long-term durability and aspirations for your audience. Now, when we talk about target market and audience, you're thinking about what type of property you're going to look to buy and who you're going to target with that, whether it be a 2-3 bedroom house and look at families, or maybe you're going to look at maybe a nicer apartment and target working professionals, or maybe look at students if you're going to do HMO. There's all different niches you could look at. So think about that ahead of time as well. And if you're going to be buying a house and thinking about putting a family in it, then think about durability and things, obviously with kids. And I mean, generally, I think in Fife, generally we do unfurnished and things, but if you're going to be putting appliances and things, make sure they're not always the best, top of the range, but a decent mid-range appliance and things that's going to facilitate a family in terms of obviously the size of the drum and the washing machine. And there's a lot of aspects to take into consideration. So think about your target market and your audience and who you're preparing this buy-to-let property for.
My rule of thumb with furnished properties is like, don't do it. Personally, I'm not a big fan. Furnished properties used to give a huge tax deduction of 10% of your top line profits, regardless. And I used to spend a fraction of what I could get off in terms of 10% top line for tax relief or allowances. But that was taken away a few years back. So I then changed to the strategy like, well, you can just you just get it when you replace it, really. But it's that's why I avoided doing furnishings anymore. So I tend to actually stay away from that and stay away from white goods unless it's absolutely necessary. So I'll put white goods in only if the tenant actually asks for them. Other than that, the house won't be like that in the first place. Then you've got things like repair bills and stuff like that come out as well, which again,
they upkeep and things.
It's a. I know it's not a big cost, but if you think about it over 50 properties, for example,
I was just going to say, you've got a bigger portfolio. It starts to add up.
It starts to add up to a lot of money. So that's why you'd want to avoid it, because it does eat into onto the bottom line in terms of that. And then you've got compliance, because then you've got to have tested all the time.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the newer kitchens and things, obviously, and most of yours have this, Jim, is obviously the gas hob and the electric oven integrated. That's a given. But I think we're thinking additionally like washing machines, which are particularly a problem in rentals for costing and fridges and things. So
freezer, stuff like that as well.
So overspending for the area is or likely tenant is nothing more than money down the drain. So like I say, be careful about where you're buying and who you're buying it for. Like I say, your target audience. At the same time, it's costly, it's time consuming and quite boring if you have to keep replacing cheap appliances because they stop functioning, or if your rental income goes down because the specification can't stand up to life. And that's, like I say, obviously if you've got certain things in there that aren't facilitating the type of tenant that you've put in there. And I think if you're not sure what's the best type of buy to let, obviously come to us. I mean, speak to me about all the areas in Fife and what kind of property, what kind of tenant they'll attract. I mean, we're here to help you strike that perfect balance between attracting the best tenants and improving the value of your property without wasting money.
Sharon, I know you said that there. So I've put the link in the post. Hopefully you've got that to the other week's show. You can listen to the podcast as well, because it's on there as well. What I would say to you is, rule of thumb is absolutely don't bother with a limited company. However, you have to the other things you have to take into account is your taxation position, and that's what I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail on Monday night.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting for you, Sharon. So have a wee watch or a listen to them and tune in on Monday. So let's go on to mortgage payments. And mortgages are efficient and low-cost borrowing that reduce your capital outlay and allows you to buy more and or higher value properties. However, whether or not you have tenants living in your buy-to-let, your mortgage will still need paying, and interest rates are not set in stone. So this all comes down to, obviously, keep an eye on occupancy rates and things as well, and having a plan in place if inevitably your property becomes empty and you do have a void, hopefully not for a long period, but obviously you need to have that plan in place. Mortgages are still excellent value, which makes higher borrowing an extremely attractive proposition. But when interest rates are low, even the slightest increase in the base rate can cause a significant difference in your repayments. So keep in mind when deciding how much debt you are happy to hold against how much equity will give you a comfort.
This is where loan to value becomes important, and understanding why the loan to value is important. It's not always the right thing to run up and go up to the 75% loan to value in terms of your buy to let strategy. It depends on what your rental income on, and also the volatility of the swing. And this is probability analysis, which we used to use in statistics. So the swing in terms of your occupancy rate, your rent possibly getting rent controlled, and going down, and interest rates going up at the same time. And if all that happened at the same time, if you've got a higher loan to value, then that could have a huge impact on your bottom line and could actually put you into serious trouble. That, combined with what we just said about taking more money and refinancing as well, could put you in a position where you have no exit anymore. You're stuck where you are. We've seen that lately with a few landlords. And so that's why it's to understand the mortgage process and the mortgage payments is the most important thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. And if you need any advice on that, speak to one of us, and we are happy to refer you on to, obviously, any mortgage advice that we could provide with the right people. You should also consider how long you're thinking of holding a property when choosing a mortgage. Fixed rates are great for a budget planning, but they almost always come with a penalty or repaying the loan inside the fixed rate period. So that's always something to be aware of as well. So think about how far into the future you want to commit yourself. Like we say, obviously, ideally, if you're building a portfolio, the buy to let is for the long game. But yeah, so think about how far in the future you want to commit yourself.
It always has to be, Richard. It always has to be for the long game. I don't think anybody should be in buy to let if they're thinking about possibly even the medium term game. It's at this point in time, because remember, we're dare I say it, we're almost at peak in terms of the prices. I think they'll still continue to go up in Fife. I think, and I'll tell people that later on, because I'm going to do a show about property prices. Possibly tomorrow, I'll probably do that. I'll do a live tomorrow morning, and I'll talk about property prices and how they've moved up and the reason why. I think there's still mileage in Fife. There's still mileage in Dundee. I don't necessarily think anywhere else in Scotland just now. And I'll tell them the reasons why that. But the key here is you've got to make sure you get the numbers right in order to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you are certain that you're going to hold a property for a long term, a 5 to 10 year fixed rate could be a good move. But if you're less certain, then a 2-year tie-in might be better for you. But there's all different options out there. And speaking to your mortgage advisor and getting the right advice is what we would advise. A lot of, obviously, buy-to-let purchases, people are looking to do renovations, and on renovation projects, some lenders will allow you to draw down extra funds at the same fixed rate after work is complete and the value of your property has increased. As with all buy-to-let borrowing, talk to an expert to fully understand your options. Now, this is something that you practice, Jim, and it works for you. It's a model that works for you quite well. I think we lost your sound there, Jim. Yeah, I was going to say, can't hear you.
I was pouring my tea, right? And I've just realised that Elaine's not put a tea bag in here.
So it's just a cup of hot water.
Kinda. It's kind of threw me off a bit. Renovation projects, some lenders will allow you to draw down your extra funds, and absolutely, I've done that many years ago, and this is why I've learned my lesson about what not to do, because I've realised the implications with some of the properties that I have now and the complications it's causing as a result. And that means in terms of, because what I'm doing just now is some of them is I'm actually transferring or selling some of them in our name to our limited company. But this is the trap I talk about the refinancing thing, where if that happens in the future, you're stuck where you are. Because I do know a landlord that's got over 30 properties. It's like he's stuck. He's not going to be able to do anything. He's going to have to exit. He has no other choice. And imagine losing all that income, because even though you've not got any money in it, really, because he won't have any money in after it. Imagine losing all that income because of the fact that you've got no money, but you're losing all the income. You're having to chop down the tree through no fault of your own because the government changed the legislation. And there's no way out of it for him. So he's going to have to exit. And this is the implications I see for people later on that are doing this strategy right now that I talked about at the beginning. You've got to be extremely careful what you're thinking, and you've got to be able to see the bigger picture as a result of that. And it's only experience and expertise and actually having that possibly happening to yourself, like I've had, that gives you that knowledge in order to do that. That's why I keep saying most people in buy-to-let, if anything, are only 15 years at this, at the very most. You know, I've got 30 years at this, and it's 30 years of understanding every single process and what could happen and how it could happen, because, you know, I'm very, very analytical about everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and it pays off, and I think obviously because you could draw for that your experiences and your own mistakes, it makes the journey, obviously things make a lot more sense to you than it maybe would to somebody that's obviously not been in it for so many years.
I take it for granted. I actually think to myself, it's like, well, I know what to do there, and everybody's like, really? It's like, I wouldn't, but why would everybody know that? But I think to myself, okay, well, I probably wouldn't have remembered that. I probably wouldn't have known that in the beginning either. So this is why I say to everybody, it's like, you know, we're giving this information away for free. And it's like, I don't think anywhere you can get that sort of knowledge and expertise for free. So take advantage of it. Share it with your friends. Tag everybody in. Let them understand. I mean, imagine when I come to them and years later and they come to me and I say, well, you know, so-and-so is involved in it. Oh, why did he not tell me? It's like, I've been sitting here 3 years in the dark, and this guy or girl is actually, my friend has actually been using this information to build their wealth, and they've not even said a thing to me about it. And yet I've had to go out and pay other people for the same, if not less, knowledge. It's like, I don't know. I've always been taught that, you see. You know, it's like you're giving away knowledge is the key to wealth creation. That's really what it comes down to. But more importantly, it's taking action. You know, there could be nothing will happen unless you take action.
Unless you actually do something with it, yeah.
So you get the serial people that go on the serial courses. You know, it's, I've been in a course, I've been in a course, I've been in but you're going to do nothing about it. It's like, you know, it's no point in going on a course if you're not going to do anything about it. So I've got no qualms about saying to people, just go out and do it. Done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, I mean, you taught me that, Jim. I used to procrastinate about things all the time, and you're like, just do it. If it's not perfect the first time, you'll get it right. Can you just do it?
You'll find a way to do it.
Yeah. And yeah, that's definitely a good bit of advice. But I mean, there is so much to learn continually, and there's a lot of mistakes, costly mistakes that can be made. So definitely speak to experts during your journey and throughout the whole process.
I would, if I was a buy-to-let and I was doing long term and I had it in a limited company, I'd be going for a fixed rate right now, interest only. I always recommend to people, we're just going to go for mortgage payments, we're going to go into maintenance repairs next. But I would always say to people, the majority of cases that you always go for interest only mortgages. You don't really want to pay down debt you're getting for 3% if you can turn net 15% return on your investment. And that's without actually you getting an involvement in it and a managing agent doing it for you. So you're making a 12% differential on the bank's money. Why would you want to keep paying that down? Fair enough. If you've got an exit strategy where you want everything paid off by the time you're 60 or 55 or whatever, and you've got no intention of passing it to your children, then, you know, by all means, pay it all off. But if you've got a limited company, it's not going to make any difference paying it off because it's no yours anyway. It's just it's the company. The company's a legal entity in its own right. It isn't you. A lot of people actually don't realise that. That's why the government can't actually change the law for limited companies as they can for individuals. Because they're two totally different entities completely. And that's why interest only relief was taken away from individuals and put to only a deduction at the lower rate, whereas on companies, it wasn't allowed because it's a totally different piece of legislation. So that's, you know, so limited companies usually typically now the way to go. But again, that could change in the future. You never.
Things change all the time.
Here's a wee soundbite for you. I remember years ago seeing some sort of white paper. This is all the consultation papers put through the government to say that at some point in time in the future, the government will actually look at limited companies. And if you've got one person as the only employee in that company, they'll end up taxing you as your income tax, not corporation tax. It's coming.
So there you go. There's
that's why there's this big push to get everybody into limited companies. This is what's coming next. It'll be like if you've only got one person, and this is to obviously the people that are just investors that use limited companies as a shell to protect their wealth and actually pay less tax. They're going to end up trying to wangle it, so you end up having to get nailed to the wall for if you've only got one person employed in that company or nobody employed in that company, then you will be taxed on your income tax. That profit will be taxed on your income tax, and it will happen at some point in time in the future. Not sure if it's in the next 5-10 years, but it will happen. There'll be because they've got to raise money, they've got to raise taxes, they've got to get it from somewhere. Anyway, let's move on. Maintenance and repair.
Yeah, no, that's good though. That's something that I wasn't even aware of. So I'm sure there's a lot of others that aren't there. So yeah, a lot to be wary of. But yeah, maintenance and repairs. So it's easy to forget how many allowances you need to make for things like ongoing maintenance, repairs, legal compliance, whatever type of property you buy, whether it's a freehold house or a leasehold apartment, it will need looking after. Annual gas safety certificates, the 5-yearly electrical certificates, which are the ICRs, are mandatory and should form part of your calculations, along with any other service contracts for equipment and appliances that require regular maintenance. Now,
so we jump in and say the thing to be careful now that we're finding for electrical certificates are they're insisting now that you're rewiring. So some of the ones that passed before are now coming up for renewal, and the electrical engineers that are coming in to actually look at them now are saying, well, the standards have changed a bit. You're now having to rewire your property. So instead of doing the usual, oh well, it's only 70, 80 quid. You're facing a bill of £2,500 to actually having to rewire the property because the standards have actually changed. So it's more incumbent now. So this is where it comes down to making sure you've got buffers in your buy-to-let investment strategy, and the fact that you can afford to do this, because if your EICR comes up and you've got a tenant sitting in there and you don't have the money to do this new EICR because it has to be done, could you imagine if you've got 10 properties? There's 25 grand.
Yeah, it could be quite costly. And we found, obviously, initially back in like 2017, when we went through all the properties that obviously your own ones, Jim, and all the ones that manage and things, and done the ICRs, and that's the 5 years done. So we've been going back, and we've noticed that in quite a lot of them. It's like, so it passed 5 years ago, but it's not going to pass now because it needs X, Y, and Z done. So yeah, I mean, that's something to be aware of. And there's a lot of other things taken. I mean, it's like even your carbon monoxide detector, your EPCs need to be up to certain levels now. All your smoke and heat detectors, your Legionella risk assessments and things. So you need to take all that into consideration and cost for that as well.
Factors fees. That's another one. Factors fees. Mill Street, I've got that on. Factors fees. I mean, that's a big hit in terms of that. I mean, we had a huge bargee with them about it because they were getting to the point they were almost to about £100 a month. It's like, what are you doing? I pay less for my place in Spain than that, and I've got a swimming pool there. It's like, how on earth are you charging? So, and then eventually, because I challenged them, they ended up bringing it down to 60 quid a month. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. So where was the 40 quid extra a month going? Because that's effectively £500 a year extra for every single property I've got there and everybody else that's got there. But luckily, nobody knew that, because I challenged that, they brought it down. And the management company's going, aren't we great bringing the prices? Well, you're not really. It's because I've challenged you.
Yeah, and the fact that they've turned around and reduced that then obviously shows well that you were overcharging in the first place then.
Didn't they need a contractor from Glasgow to come and look at a property in Kirkcaldy? That's effectively what they were doing.
Yeah. I mean, I kept an eye on that.
These are all deductible. These are all deductible immediately against your profits, and all the service charges and all these things that you've got.
Yeah.
Gardens, lifts, dare I say, in higher value properties, which is no mine. Concierge service, cleaning windows, communal areas. You'll usually attract a higher rent for these areas, but then you've got to think about, is that the strategy you want to have, or is it you want basically cash cows?
Yeah.
Every single time they're paying money, every single time. It's like having a Coca-Cola machine. Would you have one Coca-Cola machine that produces 100% of your profit? I mean, less servicing costs, less effort to do. you go and stock it now and again, and you get 100% of the proceeds, and it's one machine? Or would you have 100 that each produce 1% of your profit? I mean, fair enough, it would be 100%. You would do 100 servicing costs, you would do 100 of this, you do 100 of that. But guess what? If your 1%, your 100% goes down, you've wiped out all your profit. If two go down of your 100 at 1%, you've got 98% of your profit left. How worried would you be? How wouldn't you? You would just roll through it. Hence the reason why when tough times come, tough people last. That's really what it comes down to, because they've thought about the strategy.
Yeah, it's all about planning. Definitely. I know, like you say, service charges and things, obviously, are all things to take into consideration, but it all depends on what type of property you're purchasing. Obviously, freehold properties, the lack of service charges doesn't mean that regular maintenance won't be required. Obviously, we've got gorgeous weather. It will still affect exterior paint work, and the interior will still be subject to wear and tear and things. So, I mean, if you've not got things that are going to come with service charges, there's still the upkeep and maintenance of properties. And looking after your rental property will not only keep them popular with tenants, it will help you achieve a higher rent and ensure the value of your property keeps up with the rest of the market. I mean, keep your rental property obviously maintained and in a good condition throughout a tenancy. It'll keep you happy, your tenants happy, and obviously retain that value and at the level of the market of the surrounding properties and things as well.
Effectively, it's all about keeping your tenants happy, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's because that's what pays the bills. That's what keeps the voids. That's what keeps your occupancy rate 100%. So it's all about. We're in a service-based business. We're not really in the business of bricks and mortar. Bricks and mortar are the vehicle we use to provide the service that we're doing, but ultimately that's what we're doing, and we get a return for that, and that's how you make your money. The capital growth over a period of time is what we're going to talk about next, obviously, about tax and stuff like that. Is incidental to the money you make every single day as a result, and then how you use that money is how you build wealth over the long term. It's interesting. A lot of people are actually talking about being rich. You don't want to be rich because rich people are broke. You want to be wealthy. There's a distinct difference. The rich dad, poor dad. It's no. I don't want to be rich dad. I want to be wealthy dad. This rich thing doesn't go with me. Rich is people that survive on income. Wealthy is people that build capital wealth over a period of time. One is taxable and the other isn't really. And that's why you want to build wealth. The income then is incidental because you can pull it down as and when you want, almost just like a pension in the way that works. So you can mitigate your tax position that we're going to talk about right now.
Yeah, so let's talk about tax then. I mean, to avoid that last minute sinking feeling each January 31st, it's extremely wise to work out your likely tax at the beginning of your tenancy. So and you can do that, and you could get a good idea of what that will be, and you can put a sum aside each month so it's ready for when you need to submit your return. And the rules around allowable expenses are different from residential tenancies and holiday lets, but there are nonetheless several costs you can claim, including agency fees, service charges, insurance, maintenance and repairs, and accountants fees as well. And while mortgage interest relief has been phased out, the new mortgage tax credit still benefits the majority of landlords.
But mortgage interest rate relief is actually still available to limited companies in full.
Yes.
This is what we just talked about previously. And accountants fees and stuff like that, that's fine. I would recommend probably to most people get an accountant to do it, because to be honest, if you do the mainstream bookkeeping, which is really just what is your top line income, that can be done on a spreadsheet. What is your deductibles? What's your interest payments? So if you look on that, we've got it on the inland revenue here. We've got a link in this post to here, in this actual on here up the top. So click on that link, and it will take you under the tax section into the government's link to renting out a property and paying tax. The government will then tell you the sections you need to identify your expenses into in order to make it so easy for your accountant at the end of the year to put your tax return in. If you put your tax return in before the 30th of September, they will work that out for you, your tax. If you put it in after the 30th of September, it has to be in before the 31st of January the following year at least, at the very most, at the very worst, then you have to calculate it yourself. And that's why you probably end up having to go to an accountant, because if you get it wrong, woe betide you, I'll tell you. Even if you get it wrong a wee bit, what happens is then they can go, okay, if you've got that wrong, alarm bells start ringing for the tax man. And he goes, well, what have you got wrong in previous ones? And they start looking back. So they can look back 6 years from the point where it went wrong. If they find anything within that 6 year period, they can look back another 6 years from that point. So if you have it in year 5, they can look back the next 6 years, because they can look back 11 years then. If you have something wrong, it happens in the 10th year, then they can look back 16 years. So they can nail you to the wall if you get it wrong. Hence the reason why spend the 50 or 100 quid and get an accountant.
Get somebody to do it properly.
Get them to put it in, because then it tells the taxman straight away, if the accountant's submitting it for you, that it's actually probably done properly, because they know these people, they've got a track record. They don't know you. So that's why I'm always nervous. I don't do it now, even though I'm an accountant, because I don't feel the need. As why would I want to do it?
You get someone to do it for you. Yeah.
Well, my theory is, why would I want to do it if I could earn far more money with my own time doing something else? I'll just pay someone else to do it. It's the classic example about, I used to say to Elaine all the time, why on earth would I want to dig the garden if I could pay somebody 10 or 15 quid an hour, if I could make a lot more than that in my own time? I'll just go and make more money per hour in my own time and pay the person to do the garden, so I didn't need to do it.
Yeah, and like obviously solicitors and mortgage brokers and things, we have a lot of good accountants locally that are good. Patterson Boyd is one, and things as well. So yeah, speak to good
Patterson
accountants.
Boyd is probably a good one, because I ask them all the questions that no other landlord or investor will probably ask them.
Yeah,
so they've probably got all the answers because they've had to work them out for me.
Jim's grilled them first. So
well, a classic example for tax, like what we're saying, is the end of the tax year is coming up for us on the 31st. Of, well, it's really the 5th of April.
Really the 5th,
right? Gregorian calendar and all that stuff. In the Roman days, that's where it's all taken from. But the 31st of March is typically what we would say is in accountancy terms. So I then work out, okay, if I pay myself this amount and I pay it like this, how much tax will I pay on that? Okay, if I change this or I change that in order that, how much tax will I pay on that? Okay, that's 500 quid less. Okay, let's pay myself like that. And I've saved myself 500 quid. So that's ultimately how I do it just before there. So the last couple of months, I'll do different ways of paying myself in order to mitigate that position. Perfectly legal to do. It's just clever planning. That's really what it comes down to. So a bit of foresight, a bit of asking the right questions, getting the right answers will tell you how you can mitigate your position and save money.
Yeah. It also says in there, obviously, about agents' fees and service charges and things. So let's talk about agency fees. And you may have a choice when it comes to choosing whether or not to use a letting agent or a managing agent, from how many of their services you wish to use, or how much you'd rather do yourself. I mean, it is entirely up to you whether you want to completely self-manage, use an agent to fully manage, or do something in between the both. You could ask your agent to simply find a tenant and rent it and leave you to do everything. Again, that obviously is whether you want to use your own time to do that. Like you say, obviously, time could be utilised to make more money, your own time, and get somebody outsource it to get somebody to do that.
We got that recently, didn't we, on the Wealth Creation show last week, was it? Where somebody said, look, I've got 8 properties. I'll probably put them into an agent's hand when I get to 10 because it'll be a bit bigger. And we're like, but why would you do that? Because you're putting all your income then into somebody's hands that have no idea about what your expectations are and how to manage them. Plus the fact you're dropping 10 properties on them at once, they might not actually be geared up for that many properties on their books at that one point in time. So you've got to ease people into it. So I would say that you should, as soon as, if this is your strategy and to set yourself free, how many people want to set themselves free? Stick a 5 in the comments if you want to set yourself free. Genuinely, put a 5 in the comments if you want to set yourself free. And we'll show it. See, I can see some 5s coming through right now. Okay, so if you want to set yourself free, that is the intention. Start off with that mindset. Therefore, you need to get a letting agent to actually look after your properties and train them how to set yourself free. That's what it's all about. So train them in order. So the one thing I'm doing now for you, Richard, is I'm training you on how to buy.
Yeah.
So you're going through the process now and how I buy and learning how I buy a property.
Because everyone's different.
I'm training you how to buy a property and learning you through that process. So then you could just go out and start buying property for me, and I've got no involvement in that anymore.
Yeah.
So literally, this vehicle runs itself, and I don't have any involvement in it at all in the future. So this is the next steps for the evolution. So you need to train your people in the beginning and not hold on to everything and just say, by the way, here you go, take it now because I can't be bothered with it. Don't
lump 10 properties at once on somebody and say, just manage them for me.
For God's sake, don't leave it till a point where you say, I'm so stressed with this, it's just too much, I can't take it anymore. It's like, oh, you could avoid that completely. And you will get to that point, believe it or no, because I've been through that. You get to that point and you think you've got to come up with some other solution, because having it all to yourself, and this is the circle that you've engrossed yourself in. It's like, this is how my business works. You're never going to get outside of that. This is never going to grow any bigger. You're never going to have anything else unless you have other people on board at the same time, working in your direction, understanding what your motivation is and where you want to go as a result of what you're doing. That's really what it comes down to.
It's all about the journey, I think, as well. I mean, there's other landlords that I've got aside for yourself, Jim, and been with them from the beginning. They've bought this property and they're like, right, I bought this property here. This is what I want. This is what kind of tenant I want. This is what we're going to do. And we do that together, move on to the next one and say, oh, I've bought a property here and we're going to different type of tenant and things. And you're part of that whole journey with them, and you know
exactly what you want the next thing.
And you know what their expectations and things are.
Okay, great stuff. And then the other one is like, well, I tell you what, I'm in the process of buying something. I know it's an empty property. Let's get the tenant lined up now. And let's get the refurb done as well at the same time. So let's conclude misses as quick as possible. We can get in to do a refurb so they can't back out in case we've done it. And then they go, oh, I've changed my mind. And you've put all that money into a property you don't legally own yet. But if you exchange contracts and conclude missives, you can go in and do that, refurb it, and at the same time as refurbing it, get everything done, ready to go. So when you buy it, you've got a tenant moving in and you're earning money from day one. That is the difference between a world-class letting agent and someone who doesn't have a clue what they're doing. Oh, I'm a letting agent. Oh, really? When did you start? Oh, I started last week. Okay. So where's your qualifications? What's your experience? Where's your... Oh, but I've done it myself for a lot of years. Okay. So why is your landlord registration number not in the advert then? I was looking at somebody this morning. I was looking at this on the St Andrews one. That group have invited you into it. It's like, I was looking at some of their posts, and it's like, a lot of these people don't have a clue what they're doing. And I'm thinking, no wonder the government wants to clamp down on it, because there's a lot of people out there doing buy-to-let and they have no idea what they're doing. And they have to protect the tenant because they have a duty of care as well as we do as landlords. But a lot of landlords, it's not the fact that they're rogue landlords. It's they're misinformed.
They don't have the knowledge. Yeah,
they don't have the knowledge at all. So it's and there's no one out there to tell them, because when the government changes a rule, they don't put any money into campaigning at all to tell them a rule's been changed. There's a classic example of what's happened recently: smoke detectors and heat detectors, all from the 1st of February, meant to be in your house. How many people have actually done it? None, because they've actually said, and the insurance industry has said, it's like, we're not really particularly bothered. It's not going to invalidate your insurance or anything like that. So, get round to it when you can. And there's no insistence that these have got to be in when people buy properties yet, still.
Yeah.
So how's that getting enforced? That's probably never going to happen. So
they're never going to be able to police that.
Unless, like anything, they're going to have to start enforcing these things and saying there's some sort of consequences to it. Hence the reason why we would always recommend. I mean, even Paul Champolina of Rogue Landlords and Horrible Tenants, or whatever they're called, on his Channel 5 show, he actually says that every single landlord should really be a letting agent, because of these this legislation. There's hundreds of pieces of legislation to contend with.
There is an awful lot to keep up with, and obviously day in, day out, we make sure that we are up to date with everything, and that's just part and package of what we do. I think, like you say as well, Jim, about whole journey and things as well. Ultimately, you want a happy tenant. You want your tenant to be there for a long time and having a high occupancy rate, and having a good agent who is there for the tenant to keep them happy and things. I mean, it's what makes the whole process so much easier, and it makes it a good return for yourself and the buy to let. I mean, there's tenants years, Jim, that I've worked with for years, and they know that anything, they just pick up the phone and I'll speak to Richard or one of the team and they'll sort it for me. And ultimately, and you didn't have to worry about it. You didn't have to get involved in things. So that's ultimately what your agent should be there to do.
Let's go into how many hours so far have you been concentrating on my one in Mill Street? I had the leak. Well, we're up to 6 hours when I last spoke to you.
Yeah. Well, we've spent another few hours on that, dealing with obviously the insurance side of things and sorting out whether cover for downstairs and your cover and things. Obviously, you had said.
And I've not had any involvement at all. Happy days. And how much am I paying you every month or every day? Less than the price of a cup of coffee. Even James Watson said it's £1.80 to him. Every single day. It's like, hallelujah. I've saved myself about 8 hours of my time. I know what 8 hours of my time is. It's invaluable to me. And even if I don't get paid for it, it's still invaluable for me to go and do something else that I really want to do.
Yeah. And I think if you've got that long-term relationship with an agent that you trust and things, I mean, Jim, there's a lot of decisions I make for you that I didn't even run past you. I just do it because I know that's what you would do, and that's what needs to be done. So I mean, I think for the cost of a good letting managing agent is invaluable when you're building your buy-to-let portfolio, especially if it's something that you should be doing for the long term. You need somebody involved with you that's knowledgeable and in the know and going to take that stress and not waste your time. Like you say, your time could be used in other means and be made to more valuable things out with, obviously, dealing with tenants that are on the phone and things that come through on property management side. So yeah, I mean, whichever option you choose, make sure you are fully informed of costs that have been taken into account for your calculations. It's wise to consider before you buy. Think carefully about the sort of landlord life you want and the sorts of responsibilities you wish to retain. And that's just what we covered there, obviously. Think about what you want out of the journey, and do you want to be spending all your time or not? And balance the cost against your time and your lifestyle to discover exactly what works for you. And I think, obviously, what's next for you, whether you're whether you're letting your property yourself, employing an agent, or you find a tenant and using a full management service, make sure you thoroughly cost your purchase, legal improvements, maintenance, and tax expenses. So everything we've covered today, Jim, some people might think that's a lot to take in. That is why you speak to the right people, speak to the experts, and have a good agent, have good mortgage brokers, speak to experienced accountants and things, and make sure every step of your journey has been thought through and costed for. I think to make yourself a successful buy-to-let journey, and basically build a portfolio that's going to generate you a good income for the long term.
Yeah. At its core, I know it's about people and it's about service and all the rest of it, but its core for an investor, it is literally just a numbers game. If the numbers are right, I mean, because there's a dire need for housing in the whole of the UK. The government can't keep up. We can provide that and plug that gap, and they will never catch up with what we are doing. That's the reality, unless they put everybody in a full-time building. But there's 1.3 million jobs out there available just now, and a record amount of jobs available. We're at 4.1% unemployment rate, a record low as well. Literally, you've got nobody to do these jobs, so therefore nothing's going to happen. Therefore, the buy-to-let industry is going to continue to grow and continue to make money. They're not in control. We are in control. But so the key is not to be afraid and make sure you join the Scottish Association of Landlords, because safety is in numbers, and they've got clout as a result if you join them. That's what it's all down to. If you don't join them, then woe betide you when you get to the point that you think, oh, what we're going to do, who's going to represent us? Well, you're too late, because they're just riding roughshod over us completely in terms of the government legislation, because there's nobody to voice them and nobody with any clout. That's probably my advice for today. Get your numbers right, but make sure you join your local landlord association and it will be the Scottish Association of Landlords
Yeah.
or the NLA in England as well, which is now the NLA or something like that.
Nice. But these associations also are a good source of keeping up to date with legislation and how things should be done in terms of compliance and legally. But yeah, thanks for joining me this morning, Jim. That was great.
Well, bye for now, guys.
See everybody later. Okay, cheers.
Wealth Creation Show 6:30.